we're seeing these gross misunderstandings is that people don't know the nature of Sharia. They don't understand how complex and sophisticated Sharia is. And it's only through a knowledge of usul al-fiqh that one can really acquire a proper understanding of Islam. And I really believe that the basic fundamentals of usul al-fiqh should be taught in Islamic education. It's very important. In terms of tasawwuf, one of the problems with modern quote-unquote Sufis is they've become extremely uncritical of themselves. And this has led to a reaction from other groups. And one of the things that Sufis constantly do is they say, oh, those Wahhabis, if we could just get rid of them, the world would be perfect. Or, oh, those Ikhwan al-Muslimin, if we could just get rid of them, the world would be perfect. But it's just not the case. The Salafi school actually emerged out of a lot of the decadence that was in the Hijaz. I mean, originally the Salafi school was from Egypt, but what they called the Wahhabis, they actually called themselves the Muwahhidun. But the Salafiyya came to mean this school that is sometimes derogatorily called the Wahhabis. And now Sufis use Wahhabi for anybody that disagrees with them. They just call you a Wahhabi, which is a problem. Because the greatest critics of Sufism are the great Sufis themselves. So I challenge you to read Ibn al-Banna al-Saraqusti in his last section in his famous poem Al-Mabahith al-Asriya called Fasl Fuqara Hadha al-Asr. Just read that section. عاش بها القوم بخير عيشة فصوريت من بعدهم معيشة يدعى الذي يمشي عليه السارق وسارقها اليوم حزب هالك. He died in 812 in Andalusia. And even though the whole book is about tasawwuf, the very end is a total criticism of the Sufis of his age, who he said were filled with innovations. He said, شُغِلُوا بِمُحْدَثَاتِ الْأُمُورِ. Right? So where are the critics of tasawwuf from within Sufism? Because the Wahhabis, the Salafi people are criticizing the Sufis, the Ikhwan are criticizing the Sufis, all these other people are criticizing the Sufis. Where are the Sufi critics of themselves? Because our tradition is to blame ourselves. And so if you think Abu Hamid al-Ghazali is a Sufi, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali is the single most important usuli scholar in the history of Islam. His book Al-Mustasfa, which was his last book, the Ihya was not his last book. His last book is a book on usul al-fiqh that is the basis of the Hanbali usul. Rawdat al-Nadir, which is taught in Medina University, to this day is an abridgment of Imam al-Ghazali's book, despite the fact that many of the graduates of that school continue to denigrate Imam al-Ghazali, which is a problem. But Abu Hamid is an usuli before he's anything else. And his tasawwuf is largely derivative from Imam al-Qushayri and Abu Talib al-Makki. In his book, in his risala called At-Tabyin, Al-Kashf wa At-Tabyin, بأن جميع الخلق من المغرورين, revealing the fact that creation, that human beings are deluded. He said in that book, he gives the delusions of each group, the delusions of the scholars, the delusions of the businessmen, the delusions of these people. That when he gets to the last group, they're called the Sufis. And he says, وَالصُّفِيَّةِ وَمَا أَعْظَمَ غُرُورَهُمْ, and how great is their delusion. And then he says they're deluded in the way they dress. They're deluded in the way they speak. That's Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. He is a critic of the Sufis. Imam Nasr al-Dar'i, who's I'm blessed to be in his silsila. Muhammad Nasr al-Dar'i, from the great Zawiya Dar'iyya in Morocco, wrote a book, Islah al-Zawaya, about all of the bid'ah that were in the Moroccan Zawiyas. And so the Sufis, they haven't reformed themselves. Ahmed Zarruq wrote a book called Qawaid al-Tasawwuf. He's another great critic of the Sufis. So if the Sufis don't reform themselves and everybody's saying, you know, look at the Sufis, how can the Sufis reform other people if they haven't reformed themselves? And how many Sufis now, these so-called Sufi sheikhs that write talismans and charge people, I mean, we're filled with this in the ummah. These people that trick other people. There are many people that go around in the name of tasawwuf, fooling people and taking murids and things. And this is not, I had some teachers that were great, I consider them great Sufis. But Ibn al-Banna says, if you want to know a false Sufi, it's the one that claims to be a Sufi. That's the first sign that they're not a Sufi. And I was in America, and a beautiful Mauritanian scholar that we brought, who I consider a real Sufi, because the definition of a Sufi, according to Ahmed Zarruq, it has over 2,000 definitions, but all of them are sincere inner directedness towards God. That's tasawwuf, sincere inner directedness towards God. And that means that a Salafi can be a Sufi, by that definition, if they have sincere inner directedness towards God. So, this Sheikh came and we visited this man who was a Sufi Sheikh. And when we came in, he said, MashaAllah, Ahlan bi-Sufi al-Kabir. And my Mauritanian teacher, who was well into his 70s, beautiful man and a scholar, said, A'udhu billah, I'm not a Sufi. And he said, Astaghfirullah, do you deny Sufism? He said, no. He said, then why you say, A'udhu billah, I'm not a Sufi? He said, in my country, a Sufi is the one that has no worldly matters in his heart. And the fact that at my age I'm in America is proof that I'm still after the dunya. So tasawwuf is very important in our religion. I believe that. It's an important science. It's what we would call our psychology. It's to understand the soul. And there's two types of Sufism. There's what's called Tasawwuf al-Adwaq and Tasawwuf al-Akhlaq. Tasawwuf al-Akhlaq is more important because you cannot get to the Adwaq without the Akhlaq. And so the first stage of Sufism is called Takhliya, emptying the soul of bad qualities. The second stage is Tahliya, adorning the soul with good qualities. And the last stage is Tajliya, where you begin to have spiritual experiences that strengthen your faith. Everybody wants the last stage without going through the first two stages. It's like people on an escalator. You know, in the old days you had to walk up the stairs and exert yourself. Now the Sufism is just to be on the escalator and you move up on maqamat. No effort. So this is a problem. The secret of that tahliya, and tajliya is in the dot, the nuqta. It begins on the top of the ha-shaped letter, and then it's removed, which is the removal of arrogance, and then it goes on the bottom, which is humility. Man tawada'a lillah rafa'ahu Allah. Whoever humbles himself before God, God will elevate him. Wallahu a'lam, and may Allah forgive me, but that's my view.